Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Jim Ernston, and we have a nice welcome for you here at Unity of Charlotte. So glad that you're here in the room and at home on Zoom as well. Let's go ahead and join together in our mission statement. This is the reason that we're here, and so let's say this out loud. Unity of Charlotte is the place where we nurture a deep and mature experience of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve. If you are here for the first time, we would love to have a chance to say hello, and it looks like everyone in the chapel here today has been here at least once before. If you're new online, we welcome you to contact us. We've got email addresses online at unityofcharlotte.org, or prayer requests also that you can to use as well to connect with us. I invite you to take a moment and move from your head into your heart space, gently closing your eyes if that feels right. As we take this moment to truly move within, into that heart space, into that place where we feel and know that we are one with the Divine Spirit. And by extension, being one with Divine Spirit, we are also all with humanity, all with creation. But at the same time, we acknowledge that as humans, we may feel pain every once in a while, a little bit of stress, maybe even anxiety. And while affirming the principle of divine order, these circumstances and events are in movement. They are lining up and becoming one with their best outcome as well. So as we feel peace and harmony in our hearts, we see that same peace and harmony expanding through our world, through our family, through our community. With that spirit that lives within each and every one of us, we simply say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen. Now's the time where we can join. If you know someone, let me start off a little bit different. If you know someone who is struggling, maybe a family member, a friend, maybe even some situation in your own life, now is the chance we have to speak that out loud in this space, and we can hold it together as a community. So at this time, say those names out loud. Kurt. Darlene. We hold these people, we hold these situations in our hearts, seeing that divine order playing out right here before us for the best outcome. Amen. We also want to remind you that we have a prayer team that works behind the scenes for each and every one of us. You can fill out a prayer request in the hallway out here. Put that request, put it in the box. There's also a virtual form on our website. So go to unityofcharlotte.org, click on prayer, and there's a form there that you can fill that out. That will get that prayer to our prayer team. You will be prayed with for 14 days, and then that prayer is sent to Silent Unity at the Village. They will hold it in prayer for 30 days as well. There's also the opportunity to speak to Silent Unity, and we have that 800 number. Or you can go to unity.org to find that number as well. And I'm going to do something a little bit different today and wish my daughter Hannah and my brother Kurt happy birthday. Shirley, where is Shirley? I'm going to invite Shirley up, and She is going to read our daily word for today.
Can you hear me okay? Today's reading is World Peace. I hold a vision of a peaceful world. The peace I wish to see in the world begins in my own heart. To call upon the peace within me and bring it into the world, I use my spiritual gift of love to feel in harmony with all others. I use my power of imagination to envision the world filled with peace. And through my gift of will, I choose peaceful responses no matter the circumstance. I envision God's healing, loving power enfolding the earth and all its people. As I claim this spiritual vision, my heart is lifted and it is easier for me to perpetuate peace. The notion that others are holding the same vision of a peaceful world encourages and comforts me. I pray our shared goal of peace on earth touches every heart and mind in every corner of the globe. The scripture is from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. Those of steadfast mind you keep in peace because they trust in you.
So that's a perfect segue into our topic today, which is wholeness. Wholeness is an interesting topic because it's a nice idea, but it's a hard one to grasp in how we actually live wholeness. So we're going to do a little exploration today, and I'm going to take you through a story. It might be a surprise, the story I picked, but stay with me and I think you'll understand why. We're going to be talking about the story of Siddhartha. Do you know who Siddhartha is? Buddha. Right. He is the person that we come to know as Buddha. It's interesting to note that Buddha's story and Jesus' story have a lot of parallels. And just because I find it so fascinating, I'm going to share those with you. One is they're both said to have virgin births. They were both born of a virgin in a virgin birth. There were both omens and prophets that prophesied their coming. There was a dream before Buddha's conception that his mother had, much as Mary had a vision of the angels to let her know what was happening. On the time of his birth, a light shone through the world, much as the star shone where Jesus was born. And there were 5 wise men that came to see the newborn Buddha, and similar to the 3 magi that came to see baby Jesus. And there are other similarities to their journey, their spiritual journey and ministry. But I thought that was very fascinating, so I wanted to share that with you. But what I want to talk about is Siddhartha was born into royalty. He was born into a royal family. And because there was a prophecy, when he was born, his father took him to the seer and they said, yes, this is the one. And he will either be a great warrior or a great prophet or seer. So the father, having a kingdom that he wants to perpetuate, of course, wants Buddha to become a great warrior. So what he does is he raises him within the walls of the kingdom and never lets him see anything outside of the walls. And he protects him from seeing anything like death or sickness or lack. So Buddha grows up in an environment of being educated as a warrior, and being educated by the Brahmins, and being given everything he needs to thrive and be abundant. And as he comes of age, he gets married, he has a son. So from a worldly perspective, he has everything. And yet, he is drawn to want to know what is outside those walls. He's drawn so powerfully because here he has no reason and no needs to go discover what's out there. But his heart says, no, there's something else, and you have to go find out what that is. And that was powerful enough for him to leave a place of comfort and abundance to step outside without knowing what he will find. And of course, as the story goes, what does he find? He sees death for the first time. He sees sickness. He sees people in poverty. He sees the other part of life. And he is so moved that he leaves his kingdom and goes in search of enlightenment. And as we know, he becomes enlightened and begins to teach. So what I love about this story is that no matter how much we find wholeness within ourselves, there's still more. And I'm going to come back to this story as we move through this idea of wholeness. Because we're going to look at the idea of wholeness as an experience we have within ourselves. But then we want to look at wholeness as we, as ourselves, are part of a greater. Because God is all there is, everywhere. So to truly know wholeness is to know God. And to know God is to know the whole. And then we're going to look at how do you live into that wholeness? How do you live into that wholeness? So let's begin with the idea of wholeness as an inner experience. From Charles Fillmore, he says, "The wholeness of being is the state of perfect harmony between mind, body, and spirit." Mind, body, and spirit. Harmony, meaning that everything that we become whole. We know our own wholeness when we know ourselves perfectly as mind, body, and spirit, functioning in a synchronous system. We can't leave out one part and fully know ourselves. If we know ourselves as mind and body, we live from a very worldly perspective. And yet there'll always be a calling to something greater because spirit within is always speaking to us and always pushing us to grow and learn and know more. Our soul knows of spirit, that spirit being our divine nature, being that which is of God. So, our first part of our spiritual journey then is to discover our own divine inheritance. Prince Siddhartha was born into that. He was born into his divine inheritance, and he grew up with that. But as we develop our awareness and our ability to manifest all forms of good, we're still called to something more. Because we begin to know that this is all still within the walls of me. It's like, look, I'm doing fine. My life is good. I'm living, I have good spiritual practice. I have what I need. I'm good. But it doesn't really end there, does it? And life has a way of kicking you outside those walls, doesn't it? Life has a way of doing that. Richard Rohr, he is a Franciscan contemplative and teacher. I know some of you know him. I have quoted him before. He talks about the Western development of individuality, because this is what we are really seeing in a very dramatic form right now. He says that in America, you know everything about personality, but almost nothing about essence. Our focus and our culture has been on the I, the rugged individual, making something of myself. And he points out that in most ancient traditions and most native spiritualities, they grow up with a deep experience of the essence of life, but not too much about the individual. So the marrying of the two has actually been what we have seen unfolding in our culture. So he says, what happened after the immense intellectual achievements of the West, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the scientific and technological revolution, We absolutely exploded the individual self. He says, nowhere has the individual self been so developed as in North America and Europe. So our spiritual journey, it necessarily begins with I, with me, because we know in unity, our spiritual principles say we must live from the inside out. So what's happening within is what we're going to be manifesting without. So we turn within first. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's the place we start. But as we develop that strong sense of I as a spiritual being manifesting in our human experience, that's not the end of the journey. Because we're still within the walls of me. We're still within those walls. So, the next step, and we go back to Charles Fillmore. He says to be whole is to be complete. But then he goes on to say that means to be one with all that is. To be one with all that is. So I can't live within the confines of just my perspective without understanding that I am part of a greater, of all that is. Now there's a sense of wholeness that goes beyond just myself as an individual. This is a move from independence to interdependence. And this is a necessary step in spiritual maturity. And it's one that you can see unfolding in our culture, and it has been unfolding for a long time. And you can also see where there's pushback against that. Because it is a radical, what do they call, paradigm shift. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a radical paradigm shift for how we live. How not only we live our lives, but how we live it with each other. Because we're moving away from I'm here to have a good life for myself to I am here to have a good life and share that with everyone else. And to make sure that my good life can be the same good life that everyone can have. In other words, our sense of responsibility grows from just me to my world. So just the way Prince Siddhartha, who had a spiritual maturity of abundance in his own life, could not resist the draw outside of those walls to include the rest of the world in his understanding of who he was as a part of a whole, as a part of a whole. So we're drawn out of our own boundaries of self-awareness to keep expanding our circles of awareness, to keep growing our expression of who we are out into channels. Remember a couple of weeks ago I talked about the idea that Thich Nhat Hanh talked about our touch points, our contacts with, the more contacts we have out in the world, the more we are able to express our wholeness and the greater our own awareness grows. So while the inner work may begin as solitary, its expressions and its lessons require continual growth that necessarily move us out into the world. But we come out into the world from a place of spiritual groundedness. And this is the key. We have found ourselves grounded and centered in our own spiritual understanding, and now we engage in the world from that place. Now what we bring out into the world is the light, the love. We get to shine. We engage in activities and connections with people in a way that they might never have experienced before. And this is a game changer. This is how we transform our world. Our connections are formed in a lot of different ways. It usually begins with family units, whether that's your natural born family or a family that you've created yourself. Then it moves out to circles of friends, to a spiritual community where we grow and connect with each other, to our work relations. These are like ever widening circles of awareness and connection where we get to experience compassion for others at all different levels and from all different perspectives. Until finally we encompass all our neighbors globally. All our neighbors globally, and even the planet. And even the planet. So how do we live into this wholeness? What if we approached everything in life as if we knew we were already whole and complete? Feel that for a moment. If I'm already whole and complete, how would I be entering into my life circumstances? I can tell you, I can feel a big shift in my mind. Because there are situations I feel conflicted with, there are situations I feel challenged by, there are situations I'm fearful of. But if I start with, I am whole and complete in myself, in God, I can step into those situations with compassion, without any fear, and know and be guided by my inner spirit as to what action I can take that will be most helpful to everyone. That's a much better place to come from, I believe, than worrying, straining, resisting, or just denying and hoping it's all going to get better. So I found this scripture in Psalms. And I know it has some old gender references, but taking it in its essence. It's from Psalms 18, 20 through 24, and it says, God made my life complete when I placed all the pieces before him. When I read this, what it said to me is, I can't leave any part out. I can't leave a single part out because God is the wholeness. So I can't know God unless I bring all myself into this. So there's not one part of me that engages in spiritual activity and another part of me that goes and does something else. It's how I used to live my life. I don't know about you, but I had my spiritual practice, sit on my little mat and do my meditation and do my yoga and Om. And then I'd get up and I'd go to work. And then I'd be living from fear and anxiety and stress and lack, and what a strange dichotomy, but it's often where we start. That's what wholeness doesn't look like. And then as I began to mature and deepen my spiritual understanding, and my purpose for sitting on the mat and oming was to carry that energy into my work life, to carry that energy into my relations with my family, to carry that vibration into the world. That takes practice, doesn't it? It's not always as easy as it sounds, but once we understand we're a part of a bigger whole, and that's what I mean by living in wholeness. So what's our first step? Always our first step is to align with God, align with spirit, universal mind, the universal energy of which we are a part. I go back to our book, Living in the Flow by Eric Butterworth. The whole book is simply about releasing your ideas and your resistance because there is a divine flow of life that will carry you into each and every circumstance, and knowing what to do and how to be, that will bring about harmony and peace and love and connection. So this is always the place to start. Then I would recommend begin to expand our awareness of the people around us. It's kind of what I said about, I used to do my spiritual practice and go to work and forget about it. No, it's carry that with me into those connections. And when I did that, everything changed at work. Well, not everything changed. Work was still work. People were still how they were. But how I interacted with them was completely different. And how they responded to me changed. And where I was coming from was very different. I brought a different energy in. And that allowed things to shift. So I would encourage us to go out this week and pay attention to who we connect with. If it's a family member, a friend, or even if it's just a stranger in the store, be aware that everyone around us, there's a connection already. There's like this whole energy. Sometimes I'll just stop in the grocery store and I'll think, oh, this is all connected. There's one single energy moving through everything I see here. And there's a flow, and I find and I feel for that flow. And then instead of bumping into people, I'm seeing people. And I'm feeling a connection, whether I say anything to them or not. The next thing is make a choice to connect. Create an intention to choose to connect over getting things done, being right, or correcting someone. It's a tough one. For me, may not be for you, I don't know. I love to be right. It's not that I love to be right, I think I am right. See? You see? But right according to whose perspective? I'm right within my worldview, right? I'm right within my world. Hey, can I let that go? So if I let go of being right, I can actually open up to another experience. So I don't have to lose my sense of what I know as truth. I want to be clear. What I know as truth, principles and spiritual principles, I don't have to lose that belief. But being right about everything outside of myself, that I can kind of loosen up. And just to see what else is there that I'm missing. Because being right is like putting a wall between myself and that person. Trying to correct them. I never do that. Well, of course, that kind of follows being right. Because if you're right, then what follows is you really need to make sure they're corrected so that they know what's right and they don't continue down life's path being wrong. It's a formula for challenge and lack and anger. And we have enough of that going on in the world. Enough. That's what I say. Enough, enough. So, my practice is when I find myself rushing around just trying to get things done, because when I get like that, then people get in my way. I mean, sometimes that even happens at home with my husband, It's like, I don't have time for a kiss and a hug. Go away. I try to get this thing done, right? I get very focused on getting something done, and connection, forget. I push those away. And it's like, wait a minute. What's more important? What's more important? So I had created an intention. Today, connection is more important to me than getting everything done. And I remind myself when I get into that movement of shutting everything out so I can get something done, to stop and pause and open. And then make sure when I am actively listening to them, I don't need to be right, and I don't need to correct them. So what does that mean then? I'm there just to listen. I'm just there to feel a connection with that person, whether what they're saying may sound crazy to me, it doesn't matter. I may not know them, I may not agree with them, but if I'm coming and living into wholeness, if I'm coming from a place of wholeness, they're a whole part of my life. And I have to bring all pieces to God. All the pieces. So that takes me to the next one, which I think is very helpful, being open. But it's being open to what you don't know you don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know what I don't know. So ask questions. That's a great practice for creating connection. Ask questions and be open to listen, whether you agree or not. We can change the world more by listening and connecting and caring than we can by resisting and demanding and forcing change. And it's not easy. It's not easy in a world that teaches us that. And it's not easy in a world where it seems that's happening to us. But I know, because we talked about, the more we resist, right, the more that it just feeds that cycle. It just feeds that cycle of anger and resistance and defensiveness. So, maybe I don't know. You ever started a conversation or someone offers an idea and you go, well, I tried that before and it didn't work. Shuts the whole thing down. Ideas, if we think about ideas as creative flow, instead of having to figure out, sometimes you offer an idea and somebody's off trying to figure out how it would work or not work. It's like, just hear the idea and know it as energy being channeled into this beautiful creative flow that is about to manifest into something brand new, because that's what we need, brand new. So bring all the ideas in. Let them all come into this great flow of life. And finally, this is one I know you've heard before. I think I've probably heard it more as walk a mile in their shoes. This is try on other shoes. Not literally. That would not be nice. You might upset some people. But you understand. We be empathetic. We think about their perspective. It was interesting because I just started to teach a course on Bible interpretation for the ministerial program at Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute. And we had our first class, and we're teaching something called the Maieutic interpretation method, which means you live into the story. So for a practice, I had them just sit back and listen, and they had a pen and journal to write down what came to them. And I stepped them through the story of the woman that was accused as an adulteress. She was brought before, Jesus was teaching at the temple in Jerusalem. It was the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Pharisees and the scribes were out to get him. They were out to trap him because they were highly threatened by what he was teaching and how he was breaking the laws. So they brought this, while he was teaching, they brought this woman and made her stand in front of him and said, all right, Rabbi, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. According to the Mosaic law, she must be stoned. What do you say? Now the trap was that the law of Moses does say that if you're caught in adultery, you're stoned. But they were also under Roman law. And Roman law does not allow them to execute anyone without a Roman going through the Roman courts, which is why they had to put Jesus through the Roman courts. So either way he went, he was going to break a law. and he would be arrested. Either they were going to, if he said stone her, then he was going to be shown as unsympathetic and unempathetic, and it would go against everything he was teaching, which was love everybody and be compassionate. Or he was going to and he would be breaking the Roman law. Or if he didn't do anything, then he was breaking the law of Moses, which was their way of life. This is serious. For the scribes and Pharisees, their whole existence was to maintain, interpret, and act out those laws because it kept the very thread of their society together. So as I'm telling the story, I'm explaining that, and I'm having them stand in the shoes of Jesus, in the shoes of the woman who's being accused, but also in the shoes of the scribes and Pharisees. Imagine, because they're often just seen as evil, and they certainly weren't doing a good thing. But when you stand in their shoes and you understand the level of threat to their way of life that they had committed themselves to maintaining and believed was necessary, it's a different perspective. And a lot of people said that, wow, I never thought about the Pharisees and scribes because I just thought they were evil. I can't remember. Oh, Martin Luther King Jr. said, there is a little evil in all the good people, and there's a little good in all the evil people. None of us are without both. And by evil, we really mean error thought. Thoughts that don't align with the truth of who we are. And they manifest in ways that are not joyful and life-affirming. That's all we mean by evil, by the way. So stand in someone else's shoes. Pick somebody that you're struggling with. Maybe find out a little more about their story. And imagine how they might feel in the situation they're in with what they're facing. And it shifts the dynamic. So I will just leave you with this. Wholeness is active. It's not passive. It's not a passive, lofty spiritual principle. It is a spiritual principle. But in unity, as a practical Christianity, we live into the practicality of these principles in our lives. So how do you want to live in wholeness? Live into wholeness. It is meant to be demonstrated. We do wholeness, we demonstrate it, we live it, and we model it. So with that, I'm going to offer you an affirmation, and then we're going to take this into a meditation. I see myself whole and as a living expression of God. Would you say that with me? I see myself whole and as a living expression of God. And God is all there is. So I invite you to sit back. Gently close your eyes. And let's breathe in the idea of wholeness. Breathe that into your lungs. And on the exhale, feel that wholeness encompassing everything around you. Breathing in again, wholeness. And breathing out, wholeness. Take a moment to just focus on your breath. Feel your shoulders relax. Feel the muscles in your face all feel at ease. As we begin to recognize that wholeness is our natural state, that everything is already whole, we can relax into that idea. And just for a moment, begin to experience your body as wholeness. It makes no difference what state you're in, if there's aches and pains and this and that. Just see it as whole and complete and expressing God now. Then let your awareness of this wholeness expand. Expand to include our spiritual community. See our spiritual community as a body, whole, complete, and functioning at its full capacity, every part valuable and whole within itself, but uniting to create a greater whole, expressing God and good and life. Then let your mind expand a little more into this idea of wholeness, including our entire global community and every living being. Everyone and everything, a valuable part of it, of the greater whole, and a valuable wholeness in itself. There is no need to take from one, to limit anyone. There is enough for all when we open up and share as a whole. Hold that vision for a moment. And if there is a particular person or situation that you want to breathe into wholeness with, bring that into your heart space now. You don't need the whole story. You know what person or situation it is. And instead of resisting, just let yourself relax and see within it a wholeness that has maybe not yet manifested, but is present. And see that it is an integral part of your wholeness and my wholeness, our wholeness. And let it be as it is. And when you're ready, keep this wide open space of wholeness within your experience. As you begin to come back into the room, into your body, wiggling fingers and toes, feeling your breath come in and out. And just before you open your eyes, say to yourself, I see myself whole and as a living expression of God. I see everyone as whole and as a living expression of God. And so it is. Namaste.
For that meditation, for those words, and for Fred Bogert as well. One voice. Now's the time where we move into that offering part of our service, because we know that as we give, so do we receive. And it's through your generous giving that Unity of Charlotte continues to be that light in our own community and in this world. So, we know these consistent giving ways. I'm not going to go through them today. But let's go ahead and hang on to our offering, or the thought of that offering, if we have given or if we will be giving online, as well as together we say out loud, joyously I give this gift, knowing the divine presence blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God unfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. We are light, love, power, and presence. Wherever we are, God is, and